Sport in Wales podcast.
Supported by DragonBet.
Your go-to for Welsh sports news and views.
Hello and welcome to the Sport in Wales podcast, sponsored by DragonBet and co-founded by Alex Cuthbert and Gareth Anscombe. I'm Geraint Hardy and I'm here to keep the guests in check as we look forward to the Sport in Wales week. Please remember to click follow and thanks for listening to this podcast. And this week in the studio, I'm joined by boxing trainer Gary Lockett and boxing journalist Dewi Powell as we look forward to a huge night of boxing in Cardiff on Saturday. A world title fight for Lauren Price, but also a host of Welsh fighters on the undercard as well. Welcome to you both. Dewi, what does a boxing kind of week look like for you in preparation?
Not such a busy one for me this week, but typically, what happens in these weeks, you have an open workout, you have a press conference and the weigh-in. All of those are set piece events within themselves that generate news. And it's amazing, always find it amazing, as much as these are set piece events, the things you can find out in between in the corridors. Always worth being a bit nosy in a job like mine. How's a boxer making weight? How's the preparation been? The whispers that you hear can send you one direction or the other, sometimes far from the truth. Sometimes, they give you little clues to what you see then on fight night. So, it's a mixed bag, to be honest with you.
So you would go into the public one on Wednesday, is it? And then there's a presser on Thursday as well, yeah?
Yeah, and weigh-in on Friday then, which I think both of those are at Cardiff City Stadium. It's these weeks are few and far between that we have these on home soil, so you've got to make the most of them.
Yeah. Mr. Lockett, welcome to you as well, mate. Long time no see. Actually, the last time I saw you, I think I was in your gym and you were putting me through my paces. Not because I can box, but just to beast me for no reason, really.
Yeah, you got my level of respect there as well, because you did put the body bag on. And I think Mr. Chris Jenkins let him have a couple of left hooks in the belly. And
he did, yeah.
Even though he was in a little bit of pain, Geraint, he passed the test.
Do you know what? I've always said, and that's what I said that day, I've always wanted a professional boxer to punch me, just to know the power behind it. I remember Brett Johns, UFC, refused to do it. But Gary's boys, they sorted me out with one of,
you out.
Yeah, with one of my demands. Are you well though? You keeping well?
Yeah, I'm very well. Life's good.
Yeah, keeping busy. Dewi mentioned the kind of the schedule before a week. Is there any lies, any tricks, kind of from trainers to the press and the journalists that week, or are you kind of quite upfront with them?
I don't know. I think my style is pretty old school. I tend to sort of keep my cards to my chest and. I don't go for all the controversial stuff, but a busy week for me. Obviously, while working and I'm trying to get to the public workout tomorrow, obviously, which is between 4 and 6:30. Got 3 boxers on the card. Excuse me, and then we have the press conference then, obviously on Thursday, which it's really good for. I mean, Reece has been through this type of thing before. I mean, obviously, Reece is fighting for the WBA Intercontinental title against Thomas Patrick Ward in the chief support, which is a big fight. But I mean, for guys like Kane Shepherd, who I've got on the undercard, Kieran Jones boxed on a matchroom undercard, so he's been through it before. But it's the public workout with all the people there, the press conferences. It's a big platform for these guys to show what they can do, really. And Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn, boxer, these guys, they don't often come to Wales, so. To get guys on the undercard is, for us trainers and managers is excellent. And as I say, it's a big platform to show the world what these guys can do. And like I just said, the public workout and the press conferences, it's a new experience for them. And it's some kind of, I suppose, media training, really. Learning how to speak properly and how to conduct yourself. And it's really good for them. And I'm sure they'll pass the test with flying colours.
I met a few of them down in Cardiff City on the weekend. They were down there kind of pitch side doing their thing. They seemed really excited about the fight. So how do you keep them focused? Because all their friends and family probably want tickets. They're talking about it. The media are running their own agenda around it. So how do you, with them boys, keep them focused on kind of, remember what you got to do, the golden rules, so you kind of do your best on that big night? Yeah,
I think a lot of things like this is over-discussed. I think boxers... They've had enough fights and they've got enough experience at this point to know exactly what to do. And all 3 of them, I mean, Reece is in the shape of his life. I mean, it's too often said that sentence, isn't it? He's in the best shape of his life. But I mean, he really is. He's restarted living the life the last couple of fights after, we've been through a couple of problems with him, and, he's always won, but I think he's realised how talented he is. So he's realised that he hasn't really had to really pull the trigger on his training and his diet because he could just get through anyway. But I think he's come to the point now where he's fighting these guys. I mean, he beat Brad Foster last time, who was a really, really good fighter, an ex-British and Commonwealth champion. And obviously he's fighting Thomas Patrick Ward now, so he knows that he has to be at his best. So look, these guys, they've all been British champions, all three of mine anyway, in the amateurs. And they've been there and done it as amateurs. So I think they know what it involves. They know the way to act and the way to prepare. They're all very dedicated, and they've all done weight. I mean, I think Reese has sold about £20,000 worth of tickets. I think Kieran's done not so far off, and Kane's done very well as well. So, the promoters will be happy with them, their ticket sales and their general behaviour and professionalism, I think.
Yeah. Dewi, Reese is definitely one lots of people are excited about. Is it fair to say that some undercards, when they go to certain cities, these promoters, they pull local talent on just for the crack of it, to get people in? But this one, it's a really good undercard. So fans that are going, they'll see some really good fights, close fights as well.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. What's tended to happen when the big promoters come to Cardiff or Wales in the past is that they may get a few local prospects, or I say local, from where they may get a few Welsh prospects on the bill. Usually they'll be the first, second, or third fight of the night. Usually just there to sell tickets, and depending on how they do, maybe they'll be asked back to do a similar thing. And sometimes that's the best that we can hope for in Welsh boxing, and it's all that's on the table. What's reassuring about this one coming up for Reese certainly, but also for Kieran and Kane further down the undercard, is they're actually in competitive fights. They're not there in gimmies, just there for their sort of ticket selling value. If they win these fights, it does feel like boxers are a bit more invested in their success because they put them in, although they're both favourites, in more competitive fights. I think Kieran's fighting a boxer from Newport, Lewis Howells, who's won 3 of 3 fights, so a bit less experience, but won't be coming here to tuck up and lose on points. He'll be coming here to win. Kane is fighting Ishmael Ellis, former Midland, or might be current Midlands area champion, so he'll be coming to win as well. He's won more fights than he's lost. These shouldn't be easy nights. Whilst they might win comfortably in the end, they will hopefully learn more from these fights than probably all their previous fights put together.
Yeah. How's this one happened then, Gar? How come these fights have happened? Is it something that you guys went and chased and asked for? Is it Lauren kind of pushing for that to happen, or did Boxer have that vision themselves?
I think as a trainer, it's something that I really encourage as well. I think these days you just get too many Instagram boxers, I call them. They're boxing for just to put it on Instagram, and they've had 6-7 fights against someone who hasn't even got a pulse, and then they're still asking for 4 and 6 round fights against journeymen. Once you've had 5, 6 fights, 7 fights, it's time to really step up and have a little bit of a test. Even if that test is someone who's at least a little bit more ambitious than the journeyman. So, I mean, when the matchmaker came to me and said about Ishmael Ellis for Kane, I looked at the record, I looked at the people that was on his record, and okay, he's got a good record, but all the wins are on points, and every time he's stepped up against someone really good, he has tended to get beat. So it is a good fight for Kane. He's only had 4 fights, so he's fighting someone essentially with 22 fights. But it's a good measure of how far he's come in 4 fights, because he's had 4 fights, but it's been very start-stop because he's had a couple of hand injuries. Had an operation on his hand about 6-8 months ago. So it was a good fight. With Kieran, again, we were offered Lewis Howells, specifically because Lewis is from Newport, but I think he lives in Birmingham now. So Lewis is unbeaten in 3. And I remember Lewis from the amateurs years and years ago, so he's a good kid. And Kieran did actually beat him when they were about 14, but you can't really look into that. So no, and obviously Reese's fight, at that weight, really there aren't that many.
Right,
so
okay.
He's just beaten Brad Foster. We got offered a couple of guys. We said yes. The one guy had a busted hand, and another guy just wasn't in the position to be in shape for this fight. So he then offered Thomas Patrick Ward. So I put it to Reese, and Reese said, "Yeah, I want to fight the best." So that's the attitude I like. All 3 of them, old school fighters want to fight the best, and let's hope it pays dividends on Saturday night and it pushes them right up the rankings.
Yeah, happy days. The main event then, Lauren Price. it's a big moment, it feels like, for her, because there's a lot of press around this. It's on BBC, which is fantastic as well, so everyone can watch it. How do you see it going for Lauren?
I see it being... I'm very confident that Lauren wins. The sort of margin of that win may be quite wide. It could be a fight where she wins all 10 rounds or wins 8 of the 10 rounds, but I would not be surprised at all if each of those individual rounds were quite competitive. I think stylistically, Jessica McCaskill is rough and she's tough. She likes to fight up close. Might look a little bit untidy, but she has a lot of success. She's physically strong for a female welterweight, and she makes that count in all of her successes. That's been the sort of overriding feature. That may play into Lauren's hands. Lauren is does her best work mid to long range. So if she can manage that distance, she could, that's why I kind of expect her to rack up the rounds. The sort of word of warning that I have on it is Lauren was an elite amateur, Commonwealth, European, World Championships, and obviously Olympic gold medalist. It's been a while now since she was fighting at that level as an amateur. I don't think she's dropped off at all. I think she's adapted to the pros relatively well. There were a couple of little things when she turned over. I think her chin was a bit high and she was bouncing on the balls of her feet a bit much. She has settled down, but I think the challenge that she's had is just that quality of opposition. You tend to find in female professional boxing that there's a big difference between the top females in the world and those further down. So McCaskill has been at that top level now for a number of years. Fought Katie Taylor after just, I think it was 6 or 7 fights, gave a great account of herself, went on to beat Cecilia Breakhouse, who at the time was, I'm not saying this made McCaskill the best woman in the world, but Breakhouse was seen as the pound-for-pound best woman in the world, didn't just beat her once, beat her in a rematch as well. So McCaskill is really experienced at this stage, and that's my word of warning, is that she's sort of been here, seen it, done it, hasn't always won, but will be comfortable in this environment. I'm sure Lauren will as well, but it just might be a new experience for her as a pro, if that makes sense.
For those listening that kind of don't follow boxing kind of every single week avidly, is this fair to say this is the first real test for Lauren?
I would say so, but that's also because like the opposition that she's fought so far, so say Kirsty Babington, for example, who Lauren beat for the British title, first ever female British champion as a professional. Lauren can make a good fighter like Babington, who's a former European champion, look miles off it. And Lauren, run away with that fight pretty much from the first bell. There's another win she's got, Naomi Mans. At the time, I thought that was just a routine, take-over fight that she got through with flying colours again. Mans has since gone on to beat Hannah Rankin, who's a former world champion. So Lauren has made good fighters at a certain level look, levels and levels below her. So this is the first fight where I think she may lose a round or two. She may have to respond to losing a round or two. Equally, she could win every round, but I just think the margin that she wins these rounds against McCaskill may be noticeably smaller than the margin she's beaten other boxers at.
Yeah, okay, so you're quite confident there. Gary, Lauren hasn't lost a round on a scorecard in all her fights, which is pretty impressive. It says a lot about her. How good do you think she is, and how much better can she get, do you think?
Well, when you said then she hasn't lost a round on the scorecards, I think that's something that you'd pretty much expect from an Olympic gold medalist. To me, she didn't really change for the first 6-7 fights. She was still up on like Dewi said then, she was bouncing a lot, chin was quite high. The last couple of fights she has seemed to settle down a little bit more, like we were speaking about earlier, the slowing down thing.
Yeah.
So look, she's a talented girl, and I think her talent alone will probably be enough to beat McCaskill. But it's like Dewi said, she is going to get tested at certain points. You might not see it. You might not see it in the action. But McCaskill is strong. She knows what it's like to be in a surprise, and she knows what it's like to. she knows what it's like to come through adversity. So she will push Lauren. But now whether that's reflected on the scorecards, I don't know. But for me, Lauren's going to be too young, too fresh, and too talented. But as I say, it will probably be a tougher fight than people think it is. And she might pinch a few rounds, but I see Lauren just being, as I say, just too talented in the end.
Also, the fight being on BBC, how important is that for you, for the Welsh public, to see a fight?
Oh, it's absolutely amazing. You know, obviously, like I said, when the big promoters come down to Wales, and it's just such a platform to get the guys on the undercard for, because it's on Sky or it's on BT or what have you. But coupling up with that, to be on BBC Wales is fantastic as well, because it just gives you a different type of audience, doesn't it? It gives you all the local people that don't really know what you do. You know, my neighbours. Oh, what was you doing? Well, that's what I do for a living.
Yeah, so you're on the telly.
Yeah, it's not me. Not that I've been around it a long time now, but just for the guys, people who don't know what they do, they don't know who they are. A lot of these people don't see it on Sky. So whoever gets on BBC can look to have a few more thousand followers on Instagram and friend requests on Facebook, and a few more slaps on the back, and friendly people coming up and congratulating them anyway.
Yeah, which is nice. It doesn't happen, does it, really, that these kind of pay-per-view channels kind of go, right, BBC have it. Do you think it'll happen again? And how do you think that the likes of Box have looked at this and approached this?
I think it's a really different way of looking at things in boxing. We've kind of seen, I'm sure we'll come on to it later, but with the Saudi thing, we've seen a bit more collaboration between different networks and different promoters than we're used to seeing. But I've got to say, you know, in a sport where not much surprises you because there's some wild and wacky things that go on in boxing, this was a really pleasant surprise. I think the drop-off that happens for our Olympians, you know, you may get like an Amir Khan, for example, who is always going to be mainstream, but we've often seen, you know, people who have real crossover appeal in the Olympics might medal, and then the general public doesn't see them again until, you know, either something tremendously good happens or something tremendously bad happens. There's that big gap in the middle between them starting as a pro, developing as a pro, becoming world champion. General public may not see that journey at all, and that can take a good couple of years. You tend to find that, like, Olympic medalists, you want them to be in and around world title contention by the next Olympics, which is working out well for Lauren. Obviously, she's had 3 years with the pandemic delay in Tokyo, which was 2021 instead of 2020. But the point I'm making is that gap is narrowed now. So people who saw Lauren a couple of summers ago winning a gold medal, making history, now they might have a chance of recognizing, or of remembering that they recognize her again. And it's my barometer for all these things is, does my mother know? And my mother knows Lauren Price, which I think...
That's a good one.
Yeah, and like my mother could probably name you over the last 10 years, maybe 10 boxers. Lauren Price is one of them because of that crossover appeal. So
interesting.
That's the fab part of this new deal.
Is the buy-in, do you think, there for more Cardiff fights if this one goes well? Because we've seen in the past, Joe Cordina, he's had a few fights here and then bang, he's gone somewhere else to fight, which money is, I know, a huge factor behind that. But do you think Boxer will kind of look for another one in Cardiff, or another few at least?
I think if you look at Boxer's strategy this year, they do seem to be focusing on that local element a little bit more. Chris Billum-Smith, for example, has recently fought in Bournemouth. Bournemouth isn't a boxing hotbed. They've had some fantastic fighters over the years, but, you know, almost decades or longer than that apart. They're talking about going to Barnsley with Callum Smith. Again, he's produced good fighters here and there over the years, but isn't somewhere you'd have an arena show. Cardiff and Wales obviously has a very deep and rich history, but they do seem to be a bit more proactive about localising it. I think for a while, Sky Sports seemed to be sort of MEN Arena in Manchester, O2 Arena in London, and not much in between, maybe like a York Hall or something like that. Hopefully they see the value. If Lauren sells relatively well, they see the way the sport can grow. We've got a couple of options for outdoor arenas here. They've got the Castle, which has hosted boxing before. I'm sure Cardiff Rugby Club would be interested in something. It doesn't have to be that enormous jump to the Principality, which feels like the Holy Grail, which hasn't happened. Anthony Joshua aside, hasn't happened in a long time.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed they look at this and they see something they can build. I feel like I'm being a Debbie Downer today, but my other word of caution is Lauren hasn't fought in Wales for over 10 years since she was an amateur before the 2014 Commonwealth Games. So I think it would be unreasonable to expect her to pack the place out, have people banging down the doors trying to get in. That's not. I wouldn't expect that to happen here. It's hopefully, if they're looking at it in a sustainable way, it's the first of many. There should be more and more people coming each time, and we'll see what happens. Boxing is a notoriously fickle business. If it does, there are some promoters who've been here in the past, hasn't quite sold. To give you an example, I always felt for Joe Cordina, his fight against Ogawa, was announced officially on 4 weeks' notice, didn't have an undercard till like 10 days before, and then Eddie Hearn turns up fight week moaning that it's not selling as well as he wants. It wasn't really fair. And, you know, Joe was a big enough name to bridge that gap and carry it over. But although, you know, Lauren does have a bit more crossover appeal, I think it may take a bit more for this one.
Yeah. So we're not expecting a capacity crowd there, but it's about building, hopefully, and seeing Lauren Price back in Cardiff 2, 3, 4 times or whatever. Speaking of Joe, Gary, do you think we'll see Joe fighting in Cardiff again? Because he's been quite honest of late about what he wants with his future fights. Do you see him coming back here, or can we not generate enough money for him to be here fighting?
Possibly not. The money that he's on in Saudi, it's probably it's not realistic in Cardiff.
Explain why for some people that maybe don't follow that.
Because
do they pay over the odds?
Because the numbers don't work in Cardiff. I mean, where are you going to put him? You can't put him in the Millennium Stadium because that's just asking too much for someone to sell that out. Cardiff Football Stadium might have been an option, but I think it needed to be built here a little bit more. And obviously he boxed here a couple of times, but Matchroom didn't persevere coming down to Cardiff. I mean, the last people, touching on what you were talking to Dewi about then, the last people who really persevered putting bills on here is Frank Warren. Because obviously with Joe, I mean, in the early days, never sold. Didn't sell out the old Cardiff ice rink, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. You know, it was never really full. But he persevered. Yeah. And then before long, you know, Joe was boxing in the Millennium Stadium. I actually boxed on 2 of the undercards myself, and on a couple of occasions, you know, the place was more or less full. So I spoke to the head of operations for Boxer, John Wish, and I just said, "Is this a one-off?" Because if it only half fills, I said, you know, I like to think that you persevere and keep coming back here. And he said, well, that's the idea. Okay. To persevere and keep coming back here until we can sell these places out and maybe we can go bigger. So, I mean, that's a little bit of good news, isn't it, for us? For those to sort of dig their heels and say, no, we're going to go back there. Okay, she didn't sell, but there's a reason she didn't sell. And that's, you know, again, she doesn't train in Wales. So again, it's almost like she's out of sight, out of mind for a lot of people, if you understand what I mean. If she's training in Cardiff and she's being seen, she's on BBC News, ITV News all the time, then people get behind her. But because she's training in Sheffield, she's not really in the Welsh news a lot. So I think that's a problem, but it's not a problem that's unassailable that we can't get over. I think, like I just said, if they persevere and keep coming back, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Don't get me wrong, she might fight in London as a one-off, but then come back to Cardiff. I think she can definitely start selling out. Yeah,
build an audience. Back to Joe. How do you see Joe's fight going? Joe Cordina, that is. It's coming up in a few weeks' time now.
Straight off the bat, I'll say I fancy Joe to win. He's a favourite for a reason, and it would be expected to win. But it's stylistically could be a tricky fight. Anto Kakachi is no mug. He's been waiting for his opportunity for a long time. He's got some great endorsements. You listen to someone like Carl Frampton, says that Anto's one of the biggest punchers he's ever shared a ring with. Doesn't really translate on his record, but he's one of those. You know, he's maybe a bit deceptive with what he does. I think his arms are a bit longer than what you first think. He's maybe a bit tougher. His work rate might be a bit higher than it looks because his body language can look quite relaxed. So it's, you know, not an easy fight, but Joe's world champion. You know, none of these are going to be easy fights. Maybe the last one you would have looked at it on paper and thought that it could have been an easier fight, and it turned out it wasn't. You know, that was possibly a tougher fight than when Joe fought Rakhimov, which was one of the toughest fights physically that I've ever seen. So yeah, Joe's a favourite. It's no walkover by any means. You know, he may have to figure things out in there, but being a world champion and, you know, the development, I think Joe's gone to another level since he's been fighting at world level. I'm sure he's 100% confident of winning. Yeah,
he's 32, I think, Joe, now, isn't he? So he has said, you know, if he wins and he doesn't get unification, he's going to change weight. Would you blame him if he did?
No, I wouldn't. I think anyone who sees Joe at the weigh-in would know that super featherweight is tough for him. And, you know, we must remember when he turned pro, he was at lightweight for a long time, pretty much probably a year, 18 months before he fought for a world title. He dropped back down to super feather. He's a big super feather. He may not, you know, I think people look at Joe and he's such a technically beautiful fighter to watch at long range. You don't quite understand the size of him because he doesn't always obviously impose it on his opponents. But yeah, he is a big super feather. The tricky task is, if he stays at super feather, where are the big fights for him? Most of them are in America. Like I said earlier, boxing traditionally doesn't, promoters don't always tend to work with each other. Networks can be another hurdle to overcome. Who knows with the Saudi connections? We've seen them, rightly or wrongly, smashing down barriers. There are promoters now. You look at the list of promoters involved in some of these cards, it's almost as long as the list of fights. Same with the networks involved as well. That just hasn't happened in the past. So Joe may be able to get a Valdez, an Oshaki Foster, someone like that. But if boxing works the way it has for a long while, those fights may not happen. Hopefully he puts in a really good impression next week in Saudi, and Turki Al-Shay, the money man, if you like, out there, wants him back on these shows. And we've seen with fighters like Mark Chamberlain, who's a good, rising British prospect. He's caught the eye of Turki Al-Shay. He's on every one of these shows now, and he's going to have these opportunities. So this is Joe's shop window, in the same way that fighters like the Australian Cruiserweight World Champion Jay Opataya fought on the last show, had a really impressive win. He's fighting Marius Briedis now, which is like number 1 and 2 in the world at cruiserweight. Then they're talking about him fighting Artur Beterbiev, the winner of Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol, the number 1 and 2 at light heavyweight. So kind of feels like a winner stays on mentality.
Yeah.
So if Joe puts in a good performance, maybe those fights against Foster, Navarrete, Valdez, which seem unmakeable otherwise, maybe they come to reality.
Yeah, I think all Welsh fans would like to see him in Cardiff City Stadium fighting. I think he would like that. I know, Gary, you know him, so he's obviously like that. But you can't blame him for chasing the money at his age. He's got to make the most of it. And if he's getting paid mega money compared to what he'd get in the UK out in Saudi, he's getting punched in the face for a living. I don't blame him.
Absolutely. It's like a little analogy that I always say, it's great to be a world champion. But when you're 55, 60, and you look at that world championship belt on the mantelpiece, but you're skint, you've got no money, what difference does it really make? I'd rather chase money. I'd always encourage my boxers to chase money over titles, because, listen, this is one of the hardest sports in the world. Boxing and MMA is brutal. And it's only a short career, so you've got to earn as much money as you can possibly earn in such a short space of time. And with Joe, listen, he's got to go where the money is. And the weight thing, obviously, when he first moved down to super feather, he said he does it comfortable. He's a little bit older now. Everything slows down. He obviously is finding it harder to make weight than what he used to. Hence why he said about moving up to lightweight. But it's like that we just touched on then. If these unifications do come up, then he's got to take them. He's got to really take them, because the money's there, and then the chance to be great is there, being a 2-belt or a 3-belt world champion against these guys. And a lot of the time these matches are so hard to put on because of the politics between promoters. But with the introduction now of the Saudis and the things that's happened, it really is incredible. Because if you'd have asked me 2 years ago, will Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren be best of mates working together and putting their arms around each other, I'd have said absolutely not. But it just goes to show money talks, and money makes silly things happen.
So obviously in the heavyweight division, we hear more about the figures, don't we? About kind of what Fury's getting paid, what AJ gets paid or whatever. So are they, the Saudis, paying like Joe Cordina double what he'd get here? How much more money are they throwing at Joe, for example, that level of boxer?
I think the money we've seen on production alone is, they're spending millions on production. So I don't know what they're spending on the boxers, but I'd imagine it's more. It's unprecedented. You often get these disruptors in boxing. So, for example, DAZN come in. Eddie Hearn says he's got £1 billion budget. Wasn't quite true. It was based over, I think, about 8 years. But he had a lot more money than everyone else at the time. Before that, you had a man called Al Heyman, a sort of
BBC
behind the scenes advisor with Premier Boxing Champions in America. He was a disruptor with 400 million, and that goes quickly in boxing. The Saudis, it's obviously a bigger pot, and whether the ethics of it, people will debate. But one thing you can't debate is obviously here to stay. They're committed to this as a long-term strategy. Boxing is responding. Boxing has welcomed this opportunity with open arms. So it's happening. That's just the fact of the matter. But yeah, to answer your question, how much money they're spending, I would say even by those that precedent set by previous market disruptors, this appears to be, from the outside looking in, way above even those scales.
Well, so there'd be no appeal if you're going to be a boxer. It doesn't matter who you are, and you're kind of going, I've got 4 years left of my career. You're going to fight out there every time, right?
You got to go where the money is.
Yeah, because it's such a short career.
You've got to go where the money is. I mean, what I'm hearing is it's give or take a few, probably around double.
Yeah.
What a lot of people are on over here. And when you're looking at things like that, you've got children, you've got a family. Like I just said, it's only a short career. You've got to run where the money is, and people can't ever be blamed for doing that. You know, I mean, if you look at Live Golf, and the golfers coming out doing press conferences, not admitting that they're going there for the money, I'd just be listen. Yeah.
I've got a family. Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm doing. Yeah. You know,
I just think the boxing community's been fairly honest about that. They are following the money. There hasn't been this sort of moral justification of it, and the nature of boxing as well is that there are so many sad stories of boxers who dedicate their entire life to it. They don't have enough to live a sustainable life after boxing. You know, they end up returning to work, or worse. There's so many sad stories that, like Gary says, I wouldn't begrudge, especially because of the nature of the sport, I wouldn't begrudge any boxer following the money.
Yeah. How does it work then, Gary? Because I don't actually know the answer to this. So, like the undercard boxers, for example, in the Cardiff fight for Lauren Price, and how did they get paid then?
I won't.
I don't know figures.
I'm sure you're not asking for any figures.
No,
but
I'm not. No, but
that's
like,
that's up to me to sort out a figure now. A lot of these guys are boxing on small hall bills.
Yeah.
No TV, no funding, no nothing. So basically, they have to sell. They have to sell as many tickets as they can in order to pay for the opponent, because obviously they're boxing journeymen. You know, it's like an apprenticeship. You know, for those who don't really know boxing, when you turn pro, you're not really going to box someone who's as good as you, because you do an apprenticeship. So you do the apprenticeship over maybe 10 fights. So in that apprenticeship, you'll fight guys who've been around the block. They don't really turn up to win. They turn up just to mess you about and give you experience. You have to pay for them opponents out of that ticket money. And then a lot of the time, you have to put money to the promoter. And then whatever's left, you go half with the promoter. Now, people say, oh, greedy promoters. But if this small hall bill, they've got no sponsorship, they've got no TV, they've got no nothing. So they're probably, by the time the first bell rings, they're probably 12, 13, 14,000 pound out of pocket. So the only way for those promoters to get that money back is to take a portion of the ticket sales from the boxer. It is what it is. It's tough. And we've talked about this for years with myself and Dewi, and where does it end? How can it stop? Because it's just the only way to come through that, the ticket selling thing, is for guys, when they turn pro, is just to fight someone as good as themselves. So they're both there to win. And then if they're both selling tickets, they get half of that. That's the way to do it. There's a lot. It's what like Top Tier are doing up in London now, basically paying the boxer half of the ticket sales. Boxers in London, some of them are selling 20, 30 grand worth of tickets, so they get half of that. I went around that the long way. Sorry to answer your question, but obviously with this Sky bill, they've got the TV money. So you sell tickets, but you'll get 10% of the ticket sales, but then you'll get a purse as well. Okay. So the guys on the undercard, they're getting paid pretty well.
Yeah, and, good.
Obviously, I've negotiated that for them, and they're pleased with it.
Yeah, and you're pleased as well.
Yeah, I'm pleased for the boys. You know, giving people good news and telling them on these bills is incredible. Kane messaged me this morning, and lovely little message. And I said, I did sparring go the other day. Yeah, great, because I wasn't there. And he said, oh, Coach, I just wanted to say thanks for everything that you've done, and thanks for getting me on this bill and the opportunities you've given me. You've been great. I was like, oh, it's a pleasure, mate. No problem at all. So it's great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's nice to hear someone say thanks, isn't it, Gary? But like, it's a different world these days, Dewi, because talent is not always enough, I feel. You've got to play the game. You've got to play the business. Social media, the hype around you as an individual is really important. How do you think some of Gary's boxers can kind of cut through in that way? And Gary, for you to think about this while Dewi answers, do you encourage that kind of social media? Do you put a plan in place of how they can cut through?
The phrase I always say, Gary's heard me say before, is that being good enough isn't good enough anymore. And that isn't right, but it's just the way the world is in, this sort of new digital age that we're in. To give you an example of how I think is one of Gary's boxers is probably doing the right things. Rhys Edwards is a good fighter. Boxer would have been interested in him anyway because he's a good fighter, a lot of potential, and he's hopefully going to go on and do good things. I've no doubt when they were either deciding to sign him or after they signed him, they would have been over the moon if they looked at his TikTok. He's got 10.4 million views on TikTok. The video that I absolutely love that I think has done the best is a video of his partner trying to take his head off with a pillow, and he's ducking and diving and dodging, getting out of the way of it. ESPN picked it up in America. Yeah. Massive exposure for him. So what I always say to boxers on this front is you don't have to be a plonker. You don't have to be picking up tables, threatening people's lives, being an idiot.
Yeah. There
are ways to do it. And if you look at some of the most popular boxers in this country, thinking of like Nathan Heaney in Stoke, Josh Warrington in Leeds, and there's a number of examples like this. They sell tickets because they are nice, relatable people who just put themselves out there and have that relationship with their communities, and then people wish them well. Josh Warrington maybe has had some back and forth with certain opponents, but on the whole, the reason why he's got that fan base is because people can relate to him.
Yeah.
So my advice to boxers in this situation is one, to be yourself, but two, just represent your people. And I think if you do that, most people want to see other people do well. I don't believe this stuff that bad news and bad feeling and all that side of things that sells the best. I think it's a shortcut for things, but I don't think it necessarily means that there's no other route or no other alternative to it. I think overall, people care about people. And I think if you saw someone down the road from you who's doing a good thing and they stopped to have a chat with you when they were walking their dog or something as simple as that, it does well. I've seen it with Lauren Price. Lauren lives quite close to my mother. And I've been in a supermarket before and seen Lauren stop for a photo with someone. And I've no doubt that person will then take an interest in her.
Yeah.
In
they're a fan forever then,
forward.
right? Simple as, that little personal moment.
And it's different to any other sport. Boxers are sole traders. To people who are more familiar with football or rugby, this sounds alien. Imagine asking a rugby player to go and sell 100 tickets, and if he can't play. It just wouldn't happen, would it? And they want to focus on their training and their preparation and getting ready to play. In boxing, it's just the structure of the sport, with boxers being sole traders or small companies. If you've got a good team around you, it can make all the difference. But they have to go above and beyond.
Do you discuss this with them, Gar? The kind of the promo element and kind of getting eyes on you, public to know who you are.
I just try to take an interest in obviously their boxing career, but the way that they act, the way that they represent themselves. I'm old school. I was brought up properly with the correct morals and manners and respect, and I don't like all that rubbish, and I don't like boxers. There's selling yourself, and then there's just acting in a way on social media that you shouldn't. And someone said to me the other day, "No, I never seen any of your fighters go on social media and shout from the rafters about themselves. They're all respectful and they're all good. Okay, that's great, but just be yourself." It's like Dewi said, if you're yourself and you do something just a little bit clever, you're gonna have a lot of people who relate to you. And I'd rather my guys be related to for the fact that they're nice, respectful guys, good fighters, don't get me wrong, but nice, respectful fighters, then they're just being like Dewi said, a plonker. I'd say something a little bit more, but like Dewi said, acting like a plonker. I'd rather be related to for being a nice guy than being a plonker.
Yeah. So that brings me on to my next bit then. So these exhibition fights that are happening, Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson and stuff. Yeah. You're both rolling your eyes. Not a fan of them, I take it, Gar?
No, absolutely. But I mean, look, I think we don't dislike the people in them. We probably dislike the way that it is the system. I mean, these guys are being paid millions and millions and millions of dollars and pounds, and these guys couldn't even really lace a British champion's boots. Mm-hmm. But look, you can't dislike them. It's the way the system is. It's what they say: don't hate the player, hate the game. It's just the way that it is, and you've got to look at Jake Paul. You've got to really give him a pat on the back. What he's done for himself. He's very, very intelligent. He sells himself well, and in a boxing way, he's surrounded himself with the best people that he can. So he's given himself the best chance, isn't he? And as I say, you've got to really give them a pat on the back because they're doing something right to be earning that money.
Yeah. Bringing a new audience to boxing, though, they are saying they're doing that. Do you agree with that or not?
I don't know. What we're a couple of years on now from, if we want to call it an experiment. I don't know if we can anymore because it seems like it's here to stay.
To stay, yeah.
But I don't know how much it does to grow the sport. I think you can probably find examples of people who took an interest in influencer boxing and transition to the real thing. But I think these people are fans of the celebrity of KSI, of Jake Paul, of Tommy Fury. Although Tommy's a bit more of a boxer than the rest of them. But yeah, I don't. I'm a bit skeptical of how much it actually benefits boxing. And my worry with it is that, like, there's no five-a-side football version of boxing. There's no touch rugby version of boxing. Whatever way you box, whether it be amateur, professional, white collar, influencer boxing, whatever label you want to give it, it is people punching people in the head. It's a serious sport with potentially serious consequences. We know just by law of averages, every form of boxing will end up incurring serious injuries. In this country, we're very lucky with the British Boxing Board of Control. Criticise them for many things. You can't criticise them for their medical care. And there are instances where boxers' lives have been saved because of the standards that they have. I'm not convinced that the commissions and the authorities who are involved in this boxing are anywhere near the same level. So what my main worry is, and this is why I'm a bit more hesitant to embrace it, is that if a serious injury happens on one of these events, the world will just look at boxing. They won't differentiate. This is influencer boxing. They will just see that's boxing. That's bad. We should outlaw it. They won't look at the amount of deaths that happen in cycling or a number of other sports where this happens. And that's the risk for me. The sort of long-term health of boxing could really find itself in a questionable place if one of these influencer events lets us down.
Yeah, it also sends a message, I suppose, that if you're famous and you fancy it, do a bit of training and you can step in the ring having a fight, which is completely not the case, right? You need to be kind of good at it and train and be talented.
I do think with some of these events, like if an average sports fan or not even a sports fan, if an average man on the street watch, say, Jake Paul and Tommy Fury, if one of those, well, not Jake Paul, he's American, but if Tommy Fury used to win a British title, it would be an amazing achievement in boxing terms. I think people can see through that these may be mega blockbuster events, but they're not the highest level boxing.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the crossover doesn't quite happen because, Tommy Fury beat Jake Paul, big multi-million pound event, amazing. How do you do against a British champion? I watched the British champion and I go, you know what? He's actually way better than Tommy Fury. What? Are these two different things or they're the same thing? I think there's an element of confusion, which then it kind of stops people really investing in the sport, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's a shame. Speaking of Fury, Tyson Fury, Usyk, give us a prediction on that one. And will it happen, Gary?
You've got to have your doubts that it will happen. I mean, there's been so many occasions where, to me, remember the 60-40 thing? And they said, yeah, let's do it. 60-40. And he said, 70-30.
Yeah.
Let's do it. And then the next thing you know, the negotiations were off. I mean, I don't know. I'm not there in these discussions. I really don't know. But it does really look the way that, Usyk has always been willing to fight. I just hope the fight does go ahead. For long periods, I thought that Tyson Fury was probably the best heavyweight in the world. Just seems to be a little bit spooked by Usyk, doesn't he? He just, for the first time, I think we were talking about it earlier, and for the first time, Tyson he's a little bit outspoken, or sort of outmaneuvered in the talking stakes. He's always the one that's on top, whereas Usyk is just cool and calm, isn't he? And I think that unnerves Tyson. But you have to say Tyson's got the size. But has Usyk got the technical ability to manoeuvre around that? So it's a close one, and it's one really I can't really pick a winner. But I really do hope the fight happens, and I'll be a keen watch if it does.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Dew.
I think it's so overdue now. I'm just desperate for it to happen. I understand Gary's sort of skepticism. Will it happen? It's taken a long time for us to get here. I think when Fury beat Wilder for the third time and then Usyk went on to beat Joshua for the second time, we were hoping things were going to be simple. Since then, Fury had a mandatory against Dillian White, which was a bit of a gimme. He then fought Derek Chisora, who should just never have, at that stage of his career, should never have been in the ring with Fury. And then he fought Francis Ngannou and thought it was going to be a routine fight, and it was the fight of his life. So I there's something about Fury, I think, since that third Wilder fight, which everyone came out wondering, what is Wilder going to have left after that? Well, Fury also went down a couple of times. What has he got left after that? And if you look at his decision-making since then, it hasn't really inspired me that he's all in on boxing anymore. I think he's seen how tough it is. And, you know, he's been down a number of times in his career, but that was a hellacious, all-time great fight. And I think he's maybe got one foot out, and they've messed Usyk about a lot. I think you look at Usyk's record, he doesn't seem to be a problem going into these mega fights. He had one stage,
he's a road warrior, isn't he?
Yeah, I think it was like 7
fights.
He's
won all these titles away from home.
Yeah. He had like 7 fights in a row where he was beating people in their backyard, and then took on a voluntary against Tony Bellew in northwest England, again to defend his titles in his backyard. And then he's fight Joshua in London. He's never phased about going to his opponent's backyard. And I think you look at his background, start of the Ukraine war, he's on the front line, helping his family. I don't think there's anything that phases Usyk. He seems to have, in my mind, a pretty unbreakable mentality. Fury, I think the longer it's taken for this fight to happen, there's been more questions asked about Fury. And there's a lot of boxing logic that says Fury could keep it long. He's considerably bigger than Usyk. Or he could fight up close and use his weight, and we've seen him do that with smaller opponents. But he's a big old target now, and he isn't flat-footed, but he's more of a stationary target than he's ever been.
So who wins, Dewi? Who wins that one for you?
If you put a gun to my head, I'd say Fury. But I think there's something about Usyk that spooks him. I think there's a big old target for Usyk.
You can't quite count him out. You can't say with any authority who's going to win. But you kind of, it's one of those fights where if you say the one guy's going to win,
you question it straight away.
You think, have I made the right decision?
Yeah. I don't think anyone would be confident either way. Whoever they were picking, I don't think there's some fights you go, look, I'm pretty certain he or she's going to win. This isn't one of them. Yeah.
So as boxing purists now, in the heavyweight division, are you really keen to see Fury AJ, or you past that and beyond it?
I don't think anyone will be past it. I think it'll always appeal. We could be in 5 years having this conversation.
Let's hope not.
Well, I wouldn't be amazed.
A lot of these fights, though, Dewi, I mean, if we go back, I mean, a lot of these fights, they never fight each other, and then when they do fight each other, they're both past their best. And a lot of the time, you don't really see. I mean, look at Brooke Khan. That might have been a different outcome 5 or 6 years before. Tyson Holyfield. That's just two fights. That's the thing with boxing politics. I mean, we're touching on it again. It's just so disappointing sometimes. If one guy wants to fight the other guy and they're both in on it, let's just get it on. It's as simple as that. And let's just hope that they do get it on in a couple of weeks' time.
I think it feels closer than it ever has. There's been things in the past, they came out in the pandemic, they're like, we've reached a 2-fight deal. And
today, there's something in the news today, I don't know if you've seen it, in the Sun of all places, saying that 2025 May is a date that the Saudis are ready to pay for it. Make it happen.
I'd like to see it. What you just said about AJ, I mean, I think every boxing fan, even if like AJ got beat by Usyk twice and Fury, even if Fury gets beat now, I'd still want to see Fury against AJ, definitely.
It doesn't need a title, does it? I think it's a big fight. Whatever happens, and it's one of those as well. It may benefit from it being drawn out. I think interest may be bigger. I think people will give Joshua more of a shout now than they possibly ever have, because I think in the wake of him losing to Usyk twice, Fury riding high at the time, everyone would have fancied Fury. Where now you look at AJ's recent performances and he's looking the business. He's really focused, direct to the target. Fury doesn't convince us he's quite with it and anymore, that he's all in on boxing. So again, I probably would pick Fury, but I give Joshua a much bigger chance than I would have a couple of years ago. Yeah,
I agree with that. Okay, speaking of kind of odds and stuff, let's get Dragon Bet on right now to have a look at how they see Lauren Price's big fight on the weekend.
Dragon Bet, the bookmaker of Wales with the best odds on Welsh sport. Please gamble responsibly.
James Level, welcome along, mate. You're a man that strikes me that one that could talk yourself out of a fight, like me.
Well, I'm not very good at fighting. I've got a 100% record of getting beaten every time. But yeah, I've had to talk myself out of a few situations now and again. I think it happens when you're a bookie.
You're joining us today from Foss Lass. The sun's shining. Looks lovely, mate.
Yeah, that's Vegas we call it today. It's good actually. There's a free race stakes. There's a big crowd here. The first race is just run in the background. So if you win, start crying, you know the favourites win the race.
Okay. And is that good or bad news for you?
Bad news. Don't want favourites. We don't want favourites and Sean Bowen down here. It's West Wales. Everyone just bet Sean Bowen blindly.
Yeah.
If he rides a couple of winners today, I'll be hitchhiking home.
Okay, fair enough. Let's talk boxing if we can, because the guys are with us. Lauren Price, big fight on Saturday against Jessica McCaskill. You've got plenty of bets on the website, I'd imagine, on it. How have you seen it going?
Yeah, we've got loads. I was actually listening. It's amazing. I just find it so interesting. It's such a tough life for a boxer, isn't it? I think as a boxing fan, you don't realise, you were talking about boxers being sole traders and things. It's a really, really tough life. And I've got full admiration for all boxers, especially Lauren Price. And what you're saying about her being up in Sheffield, and perhaps she doesn't get the recognition she deserves, I think, being down here. But people love her, and we'd love to see her win on Saturday. And she's priced accordingly, so she is 1-3 to win the fight. And I know you're talking as well about she'd probably win, but what's the distance? So we've got a 5-1 to win the fight, but the fight not to go the distance. 16 to 1 the fight to an end in a draw, or 10-1 Lauren Price to win by KO. So I'm going to ask the boys there. Is that a good bet, boys? Lauren Price to win by KO? What's her punching power like?
I'd say points. I'd say it's a banger for points. She hasn't stopped many. I think she's got more power than her record suggests. But I think she was still quite amateurish in her first 6 or 7 fights. But you might be right. Maybe she sits down on her punches a little bit more to this fight and gets her out of there late. But my bet would be points.
I'd agree with Gary. I think a distance win would be, if I had to bet my last pound, I think it'd be on that. But I would say McCaskill's probably going to give her more of a target than previous opponents. So if a stoppage were to come, I don't think it'd be Lauren blasting McCaskill off her feet. Maybe an accumulation of things. And it's the type of thing that home advantage can swing in your favor. If you pour it on an opponent, a referee may take a closer look than they would have otherwise.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so plenty of different bets will be on the website for Saturday night for that. Have you got stuff on the undercard that'll be on the site as well, James?
Yeah, that'll all be on the site. Sorry, the noise is getting louder. What is that? It looks like the favourite's going to win. So I'm holding back the tears, yeah. Just cost me a few quid live on air.
It's all good. It's all good. We've got the Premiership final rugby as well, Llandovery Newport on the weekend. Have you got odds for that?
Yeah, of course we have. They're like 2 worthy finalists, aren't they? Llandovery and Newport. So we got Newport the slight underdogs +4. Match odds Llandovery are 4-7 and Newport are 5-4. But I think it's going to be a great match. Like I say, both deserving favourites. And of course we've got all the specials on the site as well. Llandovery to win by 10 points, Newport to win by 20 points, all the usual stuff. So that's all on there.
Yeah, that's going to be a great final, that one for sure. Newport actually won the last game between them 2 teams. So plenty on that one. It's going to be a good one. I'm actually backing Newport to win. That's part of my charity bet. So we'll get to that in a bit. URC action, as always, you've got all that covered on the website, take it?
Yeah, we got that. So Dragons are 3-1 to beat the Stormers. The Scarlets are 2-1 to beat Ulster. Cardiff are 7-4 to beat the Lions. And the Ospreys are 5-1 to beat Leinster. But we normally you think that's quite a short price, but we're expecting Leinster to have a weekly team this week.
Yeah, and that's fine. Okay, cool. Yeah. All right, and also Sean Bowen, you mentioned him. You got odds on him for the week, have you?
Yeah, we're going evens on him to win the Jump Jockeys Championship. He just missed out this year. He had a bit of an injury, but he's evens, which I think is a good boost. I think I might even back him myself. So, yeah. But going back to boxing, guys, we were having a problem pricing up Lauren Price. I was going to ask the guys, is it more likely or less likely, or makes no difference at all, that it's a women's fight for knockouts? Is there the same amount of knockouts less? Do the matches go to points more often?
I would say we tend to see less, and that's probably because the format of the fight. So where as a world title fight for men would be over 12 3-minute rounds, in women's boxing it's over 10 2-minute rounds. So what you tend to find is if a woman has her opponent in trouble, it's a much shorter round. So there's less time to survive, if you like. And a knockdown, let's say a knockdown happens, you have 10 seconds to recover. Usually by the time the referee's actually wiped the gloves down and sent the opponent to the opposite corner, that's 20 seconds, which is a big chunk out of a 2-minute round. So we tend to see less, but there are probably exceptions to the rule always. But yeah, I would say as a general rule, we do tend to see less in women's boxing.
Fair enough. Lauren Price on points it is then. That's the bet.
Well, speaking of that, let's turn our attention to our charity bets then. We obviously support Prostate Cymru and Latch. My charity bet, well, are you allowed to bet, Gary? You're probably not allowed to bet on boxing, are you? Not at all.
I've never
You don't bet
in my life.
Okay.
What lottery and
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
My mother used to put like £1 on the granddad, but
Yeah.
in terms of betting and all that 4-8 and 2-1, and I know what 2-1 means.
Yeah.
But when it's like 3-10 the other way and odds on and each way, I have not got a clue.
You need a session with James. He'll explain it all for you.
I'll have a session with James, and he can have a session with me with a body bag on.
Yeah, I was going to say your favourite there, Gar. Thanks for the invite, but I'll call you. You don't call me.
Well,
Yeah,
there we have
great.
a think. You can have a charity bet, okay, to support these causes. If that's okay. Well, I'm going to go for a double this week, James. I'm going to go for Lauren to win, and then I'm going to go for Newport to win. So a double on that, please. Okay.
Just to explain to the guys, we do this charity bet. There's no real money goes to me if you bet a loser, but if you do back a winner, we give the money to charity. So at the moment, we're giving it to I think it's Mind and Latch. Latch is the children's charity for kids in Wales, which is a great cause, as I'm sure you all agree. And we've managed to get.
So we get a charity bet, right? Sorry.
Yeah.
You get a charity bet. Yeah.
So it's Prostate Cymru and Latcher is James.
Prostate Cymru and Latch. That's it. And Geraint's backed a few winners, so I think we're 525 quid in the pot at the moment. So to go back to yours, Geraint, what did you say? Newport and Lauren Price to win?
Please, yeah.
Yeah, that'll be 2-1.
Okay, happy with that.
And Lauren Price to win and Ospreys to win because Harry Deeves plays for Ospreys and he's one of my son's coaches at Pontyclun Youth. So
nice. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll give you a nice juicy 10-1 on that. So
lovely
10-1.
Oh,
10-1.
That's good. That's good. Dewi, what do you want to back this week?
I'll go, if it's for charity, not the greatest value in Lauren on points, I'll go out on a limb. Lauren stoppage or KO. And one of my best friends plays for Ebervale, who just got smashed by Newport. So I can't, with a good heart, bet on Newport. He won't be very happy with me. So I'll bet on Llandovery to beat Newport.
Okay, so Lauren's 10-1 to win by KO. And Newport, Llandovery are 4-7 to win the match. So we'll give you 20-1 on that.
Well, hey, there we go. I kind of hope that happens now, anyway. James, thank you as always. Enjoy the Sun and Foss last, and we'll speak to you soon.
Cheers. I got to try and get some money back.
James.
Please pray for your bookie.
My violin's out for you already, mate. My violin's out.
I'm sure.
Cheers, mate. Cheers, mate. Gary and Dewi, thank you so much. Enjoy the week. Sure. Good luck to all your fighters, Gary. I know you've been working hard, so wish you all well.
It's a big week for the guys, and obviously a busy week for me. But these are what we're in boxing for. You know, when they first turn pro, a big bill like this, all being on the undercard of a world title fight in the CIA. And hopefully they can win and then push on to bigger things.
Yeah, and you're doing some comms as well in between the fights, yeah.
Yeah, so I think they must like me at BBC. All the guys at BBC must like me anyway because I had about 5 or 6 different people. Come and do. I said, well, I'm too busy. And then Moggs was on. Oh, come on, and then someone else was on. I said, all right, look, I said I'm busy, but I can possibly do the main fight. What do you think? So then I was involved in an email then approaching, and they said, "Yeah, that's great."
Yeah, brilliant.
So it puts myself under a little bit of pressure because obviously I think Lauren's fight will be right after Reese's, but I really enjoy doing the commentary and working as an analyst on the boxing. So something I really enjoy doing. So I look forward to it.
Yeah, it'll be great. I'll be watching, that's for sure. And Dewi, you're ready for it, yeah? All your fight preps ready.
Yeah, and what I would say as well to anyone, whether you've got an active or passing interest in Welsh boxing, I've been doing this not as long as Gary, but I've been in and around Welsh boxing for 14 years now. These do not come around very often. Thinking Joe Cordina challenged for a world title in his hometown in Cardiff 2 years ago. Before that, you're going a long time ago. You know, proper world championship boxing in Cardiff doesn't happen very often. So make the most of it, whether you watch on TV or come along in person. I promise, it should be worth it.
Yeah, here. Thanks for your time, guys. Really, really appreciate it. Pleasure. And remember, we'll be back next Monday for more Sport in Wales chat, and you can follow us on socials or just search Sport in Wales. Tell your friends about us and share the love. We will catch you next week, wherever you go, wherever you are. Enjoy your Sport in Wales week.